Hi and welcome back to the channel, and today we need to get a long overdue progress video done on the Forest weapon. Yes, so it has been a while since we've got a video done on this car, and it was always the plan to work on this one in the background and just tinker away with it when we had a bit of time, and so things have been quite slow in the progress. However, we have got a lot of bits and pieces done. We have been doing a lot of work on the engine, I'll cover that shortly, and also the transmission. In the last video, we pulled apart a Forester XT and we've robbed a lot of bits and pieces out of that. Now that particular car is based on the GD Impreza, so the later model to the GC, and so therefore some of the bits bolt in without any problems and other bits are not quite right. So we'll cover a bit of how that's all gone together shortly. And then the major chunk, we've got the engine and transmission in the car in one piece. However, it is still largely a shell, and being that we want to get this car out and done for the last rally of the season, we need to get a crack on with it. So let's see where we are with it, and then let's keep moving on. Looks like a bird flew by and landed on it.
A pecan.
A pelican.
A pecan flew and made that.
Okay, with the pelican droppings, aka ice cream, removed from the dash, it was time to actually fit it to the car. This might seem like a simple task, but you do need to get out of the way early. You usually need the windscreen out to get the dash fitted because it's got to go around the roll cage, and quite often they need trimming and cutting to get them in. So with the dash marked, we'll let Ali G cut it out. Alright.
Okay.
Anyway, I digest. Let's get on with the dash fitting. With the design of the roll cage and the earlier GC dashes being deeper, we had to cut the dash in half and fit it in two pieces. The dash will then be fixed in place, glued back together, and if needed, flocked to hide the join. The next task was to tackle the engine and transmission. We'd already sourced a Jap import version 6 STI engine, so that part of it was solved. However, it had been sitting for some time, so we don't want anything to fail on it, so precautionary measures, full cam belt kit, seals, water pump, a whole bunch of coolant hoses were all replaced at the same time. It was then onto the rear of the engine with a new rear main seal, machine flywheel and a brand new clutch. Incidentally, this is an STI and it did have a red manifold, however the paint was terrible on it, so we cleaned it all off. At this stage, our Forest weapon project is going to run a 5-speed gearbox, so we've gone a bit old school. We've put a 20 kilo centre diff and a plate front diff in it, and later on we've got the option to go 6-speed or a sequential. Before we can put major pieces back in the car, one last thing to tackle, it's the power steering lines. With the GCs now well over 20 years old, some of the factory power steering lines are starting to leak. We don't want a problem with that, so we made up some Aeroflow stainless steel braided lines, and then we won't have an issue. With the car on the hoist, we could then tackle removing all of the Impreza front end out of it. So that's the front cross member, steering rack, suspension, brakes, etc., because we're not going to be reusing any of that in this build. Now we could get onto the fun bit, starting to put the car together. Engine, transmission and front cross member all in one piece. It's a bit like they would do on the assembly line when the cars were built. However, I doubt they'd use a forklift. Having the machine though does make it way easier and faster than using an engine crane, which we've done several times on this channel before. Right, with that bit of the front sorted out, it was then time to get onto the rear. Out with the two-wheel drive rear cross member and the two-wheel drive fuel tank. We're going to use the Forester fuel tank, however we will have to do some custom fuel plumbing for it. Let's take some quick stock of where we are with this thing. So basically, as I said a while ago, being an Impreza, we had to drop everything out of it. The two-wheel drive Impreza, pretty much everything is different to the four-wheel drive and the four-wheel drive turbo versions. And we robbed all the bits, or a lot of the bits, out of a Forester XT, which is based on a GD chassis rather than the GC. However, lots of parts bolt straight in. So rear cross members in, rear differential, what we call the mustache or T-bar, which is the diff carrier support brackets in, the rear arms are in, the engine and gearbox already is obviously in, front cross member and bits and pieces like that are all sorted out. Went to put the tail shaft in using a WRX tail shaft rather than the Forester XT's tail shaft, basically because the XT one has got flogged out universal joints in it. I had a spare WRX shaft, so no problem there. However, did come across a little drama, nothing major. The shifter bush, the rear shifter bush, is different on the Forester because the engine and transmission are spaced down in a Forester, so they have a bush as well, and that fouls on the tail shaft. So got to get that sorted out. However, nothing too serious. Probably not able to see it on camera. However, we have got at the moment the rear drum brakes still in the car, which means it's still in two-wheel drive configuration. We will be pulling these out and putting WRX hubs in. I've just got to get some new wheel bearings into a set of spare hubs that we've got, and we'll swap it all over. The drum brake and the disc brake rear end are completely different, not only of course in the braking setup and the two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, but even the four-wheel drive non-turbo ones are different. They have a different spacing and bolt pattern where the struts bolt on. So the WRX struts are not interchangeable with four-wheel drive non-turbo or two-wheel drive cars. So just something to be aware of if you have a two-wheel drive Impreza. Alright, we will, however, start getting this thing back to being able to roll it. Need to get it off the hoist for the next couple of days, and whilst waiting on that shifter bush, once that comes in, I can get on, put the tail shaft in it, and finish off everything underneath it. Okay, so that's where we are with our Forest weapon build. There's still a way to go, however, we really are going to have to get stuck into it if we're going to get this thing done in time to make the last rally of the season, which really isn't that far away. Hope you've enjoyed our build of the Forest weapon. Please give us a thumbs up. It's very important for the YouTube algorithm, and also subscribe, and we'll catch you again soon. Cheers.